And we're off and running. Krueger Show going 3 streams in a row today. We don't normally go 3 streams on a Wednesday, but we're doing it because tomorrow is the 4th of July. We normally would have Dieter in his normal spot on Thursdays. But, we thought, you know what? 4th of July, I'm going to be busy blowing stuff up and trying to set Joey Chestnut records.
That's right.
I'm still affiliated with who I'm affiliated with. So even though Joey's got new affiliations and won't be there on 4th of July, I will be there on the 4th of July doing all I can to crush the spread.
Hell yeah.
And to eat as much as I possibly can. I will ask questions. I won't be listening to the answers because I'll be eating. I'll make conversation, and I still will be thinking only about what am I going to eat next.
Right.
So that's kind of where it's at. But welcome to the Krueger Show. And today we had Damon on this morning at 8:45, and then we did a little Sai-Satsis, a warrior breakdown late in the morning, which was good. And now we're going to do a little bit of everything with Dieter Kurtenbach, who you can catch in the San Jose Mercury News. You can catch on KMBR. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you can catch on his own YouTube channel. Dieter, how are you, man?
I'm great, Larry. I'm doing really well. You have in times given me flack, or the great island of Alameda flack, for being so damn cold. And I bet you wish you were on the island of Alameda right now, my friend.
Seriously. Bet. Oh, God, yeah. I mean, we are probably no more than 30 minutes away from each other.
Yeah.
And yet
different places.
I'm sitting in 100. Well, let me see. I'm not sure what I'm sitting in. What am I sitting in?
Has the studio turned technically into a sauna? Because there's a tremendous amount of health benefits.
Yeah.
Heat shock proteins, all that. You're doing
so it's
double
84.
Duty right now,
it's 84 in Walnut Creek. My studio is in my garage, which it has one door to the outside. The garage is the equal of Qatar. So it's kind of like a little bit of the Middle East.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably 84 in the creek, 104 in the garage, 94 in my studio. So it's but I've got water, I've got a fan, I'm very comfortable. It's
the
a
level
very comfortable
of professionalism.
Studio.
It's got to remind you, being back at Sac State, some of those summer football practices. It's got to
go Hornets, go Hornets.
Melt them.
Yeah, G. Martinez says Krug with the illegal fireworks. No, they won't be illegal. Though my brother and I will, it's like my brother is a judge, and you'd think he's like responsible. No, he's already sent me pictures of the ridiculous amount of fireworks that he's purchased.
Above the law.
I told him, we'll be bringing our own. So fireworks, my brother's always loved shooting off fireworks. Always, and sparklers used to be a little bit. The sparkler of yesteryear actually had a fountain of sparkles.
Right
now, it's kind of like a burning hot core, but the sparkles don't go as far.
It's weak ass.
Right. The ground flowers used to buzz all the way across the street and go under cars and stuff. It was really cool. Now, much more muted. If they go 20 feet, that's max. They used to go 150 feet.
We used to be a proper country, Larry.
Right. And now, though my brother he has one firework called the Best of Show.
Oh, that's
and it's
name.
like $50.
Jeez.
And the thing it's like 3 different chambers. So it burns crazy over on the left, then it burns crazy over on the right, then the middle. And it's an amazing thing. It's
gotta be.
It's almost like the Coneheads. You ever see the movie The Coneheads where they bust out their own fireworks? Everybody's like, "Oh my God, what was that?" Because they were the Coneheads. They were the best in show. Yeah. So anyway, we will do that tomorrow, and because we're doing that tomorrow, we're going to do our Thursday night show on Wednesday night.
Right.
So here we are, and I titled it Brock Purdy's offseason progression because Mike Clay from ESPN.com went through the 49ers and kind of asked questions like, a full breakdown of the 49ers, position by position. And he expects Brock Purdy to backslide, to actually his numbers to not be as good this year. To me, I think that if there's very few things that I'm convinced of, well, one of them is that I think Purdy, off of a full off season, is actually bound to make a significant step forward. I think he's got more improvement to go. I think there's a very good chance that, devoting an entire offseason to actual preparation for the upcoming season, believe it or not, there's something to that. So,
so I've heard.
Yes, I think I see Purdy making a significant step forward. And if you're in the camp that you believe the Niners could go back to the Super Bowl, most people who believe that, Brock Purdy having a really, really strong bust out year is going to be a big factor.
I'm with you, Larry. Like I would venture to say if I was putting money down on it, I'd go for the over as opposed to the under. If we're just setting the line on Brock Purdy better or worse. And let's be explicit about what that means. I mean, 4,280 passing yards last year, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a QBR of 72.8, which led the NFL. These are exceptional numbers. They're MVP caliber numbers. And I think that when you say Brock Purdy MVP caliber numbers, I don't think it's unfair to think, oh boy, I mean, how's he going to do that again? But when you actually watch all the games and you're as embedded with the team as you and I are, I think we understand how. We can see so many more avenues for success moving forward. Now, let's be pretty clear about this. He has to stay healthy. He's got to be on the field the entire season. He needs Brandon Aiyuk to put up these kind of numbers year over year. But he's already done one important thing this offseason, which is, I don't care to comment on men's appearances all that often. I'll call a spade, but I'll be honest about it. I'm comfortable enough with myself and how I live to be okay. So Brock's looking ripped. He's looking good. He looks like a new man. And it's not this Russell Wilson, I'm going to change my body every other year because I'm trying to, trying to prove some point. Brock looked at his career to this point and decided that he needed to put on a little bit more weight, or even not more weight, more muscle. Needed to be stronger, needed to have a little bit more punch for those situations, which he found himself in often last year when he was scrambling and trying to make plays on a second and third opportunity. And so having that little bit of extra heft, I don't think it's going to slow him down at all. We'll have to find out in training camp, but I really don't see that at all or expect that at all. And I do think it gives him an advantage to not only stay on the field longer, but maybe even push the ball down the field a little bit further and to make some more plays that maybe weren't there for him last year or that Kyle wouldn't have felt comfortable with him making last year. And they kind of pared those down as the season went along. So that's a big win there. Two, they have the weapons. If you get Brandon Aiyuk back, you now have more offensive weapons at your disposal. And three, I think it's pretty evident. And I know Matt Barros wrote this week. You and I have been talking about it forever. Like it seems inevitable that the 2024 San Francisco 49ers are going to be a more pass-happy team. And I know that Christian McCaffrey is the center point of the offense. And that doesn't exclude you being a pass-happy team. He's a great pass catcher. But with the way that the personnel is currently structured, it seems to me as if they're going to run a lot more 11 personnel, be more of a Sean McVay-like offense than maybe the traditional Kyle Shanahan-like offense. And if that's the case, there's more opportunities for Brock Purdy to put up big numbers. I don't know how much people really care about the completion percentage so long as it's good, so long as we're talking, above 66%, something to that effect, 65%. Brock completed almost 70% of his passes last year. He only attempted 444. So if we're now just talking about a larger denominator where we're talking about 500, 550 passes, the numbers are going to go up even if he loses a bit of efficiency there because he has a lot of room to give on that front. So maybe the QBR isn't as good, but the touchdown numbers are closer to 40. The passing yards are closer to, who knows, maybe even 5,000. And that's an arguably better year if you're Brock Purdy. Has to happen. A lot of things that can go wrong. And there's no guarantee that any of this materializes because we have seen situations where the book got out on Brock Purdy. I'm thinking Baltimore. I'm thinking Detroit. I'm thinking Green Bay. And they put him in some struggle situations. Kansas City, certainly. And he didn't look his best. He's not perfect every game. And I'm sure teams are going to be studying those games as opposed to the ones where he kicked ass and trying to replicate the stuff that actually gave him problems. So he'll have to adapt. He'll have to advance. But again, I do think that the opportunity is there for him. And I do think he's the kind of person who takes those opportunities to have an even better year. And I think we're going to be having another campaign of MVP conversation when it comes to Brock Purdy.
It's interesting. I think the natural inclination when you see Cowing in round 4, Pearsall in round 1, see that the Niners are going to go more 3 wides, and yet Shanahan was asked about that earlier this offseason. He said, "No, I don't expect there to be any uptick in 3 wides. I'm going to, we're going to do exactly what we've done in the past. We're going to continue to do so. It will be interesting to see how he utilizes his talent, how he gets these guys on the field, especially some of these guys that." Like an Isaac Garendo who might be able to play multiple spots. You mentioned Brandon Aiyuk. According to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo, he recently reported that the Niners and Aiyuk are, quote, no closer to a deal. What do you think about that, Dieter? Because, it is interesting. I mean, there was the Pivot podcast, and then him came out and he said, "Hey, I got one more meeting with the Niners, and if it goes well, I'm going to be back there. And if it doesn't go well, then I might have some interest in joining Jaden Daniels with, the Washington Commanders." Mm-hmm. And then we thought they had that meeting. We were under the impression that it did go well. Right. Then we saw a video of Aiyuk, coming down Marie DeBartolo way there, trying to get into the facility a couple days later. And I just kind of assumed, okay, hey, they met face-to-face. They hammered out some things that needed to be said. Now he's back at the facility a couple days later. He's probably going to sign his contract. But then it hasn't happened. And now Garafolo reported that both sides are no closer to a deal. Tom Pelissaro said they won't be talking at all during the 4th of July week. So what do you think? I mean, do you think they're on the doorstep to inking a deal? Or do you think, as Garafolo reported, that they're no closer to a deal, and this thing, Florio, for example, of Pro Football Talk, believes he understands the Niners' mindset. He said there's a game of semantics going on between the 49ers and Aiyuk. He says even if he hasn't asked to be traded, we believe his agent was given permission to seek a trade before the draft. Yeah. He goes on to say the goal, we also believe, was to let Aiyuk realize that no one else was willing to give him the $30 million per year that he reportedly has been seeking. Right. Ultimately, no one was willing to give Aiyuk what he wants in a contract and what the Niners want in a trade. Otherwise, a trade would have happened. So he's just kind of trying to go through the mindset of where the Niners are with this.
I'm with you.
What's your read on the latest on Aiyuk? Are we on the doorstep, you think, to a deal that's going to get done, with plenty of time to spare, and he's going to be there at the start of camp? Or has this thing is there really it's more of an impasse type situation, and you could see this thing coming to a head and maybe even a separation between Aiyuk and the Niners?
I don't see a separation between Aiyuk and the Niners on the strict basis of the 49ers need Brandon Aiyuk, and he's under contract for this year, and it's going to cost him more money than he's willing to lose to hold out all the way into the regular season and beyond. So he's not going to do that. And ultimately, between now and the start of training camp, and that's a couple weeks from now, there's no reason for Brandon Aiyuk, unless he feels an immense amount of pressure to get this done before some bills are due on July 15th or something. But I don't see why he would have the impetus to come off of the number that he wants. And I see no impetus for the 49ers to come up from the number that they want. And so, we've heard a bunch, GMs love to say it, Bob Myers love to say it, John Lynch loves to say it, like deadlines create action. And since we're no closer to any sort of a deadline, July 4th is not a deadline. First day of training camp's barely a deadline. It's really that first preseason game when the fines start getting pretty intense for Brandon Aiyuk. There's a deadline. And I don't think the 49ers have any reason to come up off their number unless Brandon Aiyuk is willing to come off of his. And then they can, be reasonable and negotiate in good faith. But in the meantime, Brandon Aiyuk is still out here pretending as if he's the second best wide receiver in the NFL and wants the second best money of any wide receiver in the NFL. And the San Francisco 49ers are strictly saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to pay you XYZ. I've heard a bunch of different numbers. All of them are fair to just below fair. I mean, but they're absolutely in the ballpark, and they're reasonable. Like, here is our first offer, expecting there to be several back and forths. But when Aiyuk is not negotiating with logic, good faith is a stretch, but he's not operating as if he understands the marketplace, even though, as Florio's reporting, his representatives have been out there, have been seeking a trade, have been looking around for that contract. No one else wants to give him that. It's not as if the 49ers are holding him back from his true destiny of being a $30 million wide receiver. It's strictly no one wants to pay him that because he is not worth that. He's worth close to that, but he is not worth that. And so until he comes off that number, until he starts embracing the reality of the situation and coming down from an absurd mark, the San Francisco 49ers have no reason to meet him in the middle, which is ultimately where they need to go. Because when you think about Brandon is a little over, the 49ers are a little under, guess what? Fair is probably somewhere in between the two. And yet neither side is going to get anywhere with their current entrenchment. And the 49ers have no reason not to be entrenched. And Brandon Aiyuk doesn't seem to be very good at this. So I'm not sure when he'll stop being entrenched.
Football teams are, you have one, you got one plan, right? The personnel department has a big plan. And then, then there's reporting day. And then, from covering these teams, then the thing takes a life of its own. It's right. Like you make all the right evaluations, the right signings, the right trades, the right draft picks, the right this or that. You bring all these guys together, and then the group has an energy and a chemistry, and it comes together or it doesn't. Yeah. And it's not linear. It's, sometimes stops and starts, and you have great days and great weeks and bad days and bad weeks. And sometimes the players all blend together. Sometimes they don't. But, in this situation with the 49ers, I mean, you don't know how it's going to come together. Once they report to camp, if he's not there, you might get 5 days into camp and look around and go, we got, 6 openings at wide receiver, and we got, 10 guys that we think are capable. But you know what? We really thought we were going to be 10 deep on the defensive line. And because of, this or that, we're actually more like 7 or 8 deep. And we really need another defensive lineman, or we really badly need another tight end, or we really badly need something else. And I just kind of wonder if Aiyuk does wind up holding out and the Niners report and you look at that depth chart, they got a lot of receivers, and they got a lot of good young receivers too. And they got a lot of receivers that may get better. Ronnie Bell may be better, and Tay Martin, these guys may get better. Almost all of their young receivers have the ability to show up and get better. And then you got Cowing and you got Pierce also, who are rookies and are almost a lock to make the team. So I'm just saying they could look up after a week of him holding out and say, well, we don't even really need another wide receiver. If anything, we need another corner, or we need another defensive end, or we need another defensive tackle. Do you think if Aiyuk does hold out and, the Niners camp starts and suddenly Danny Gray looks good and Pearsall looks good and Cowing looks good, and some of these guys, are really playing at a kind of a higher level. They look pretty good, and Debo's in great shape, and that yes, they don't have Aiyuk, but man, they sure look like they're covered there.
Yeah.
And they're suddenly have a void somewhere else. Do you think that the Niners could pivot and change their mind about how they want to view Aiyuk if there's a potential opportunity to trade him and fill a couple needs or fill a key need that right now you don't envision as a need?
It's a possibility. I can't say it's not, for the main reason you laid out, which is they should be very deep at wide receiver. And Ricky Pearsall absolutely looked the part in minicamp, which means very little, if anything, a month or so ago. So that they could get in there and say, fuck it, let's go with Pearsall all the time. He's just as good, if not better. We feel really good about this. It could go the other way. They could get in there, and Brandon Aiyuk can now suddenly have a tremendous amount of leverage because Deebo Samuel twisted his ankle and is going to be out for all of training camp. And Ricky Pearsall doesn't look like the same guy that we saw at rookie minicamp and all that. And Danny Gray isn't any good. And Ronnie Bell isn't any good. And now suddenly this area that you thought, because again, as you noted, these teams come together and then you actually find out this wide receiver crew that anybody who's paying attention thinks can be really deep this year. It might not be as deep as we think. I mean, it has to be practically applied onto the practice field, onto a preseason game field. And they might, Kyle Shanahan might look at it and be like, damn, we really need Brandon Aiyuk. In which case, Brandon Aiyuk just made more money. And congratulations to him. So it can go either way. I would venture to say the more likely option is that, the 49ers feel more comfortable with their wide receiver core if Brandon is not there, because they really like the guys that are there and those guys are performing, and somebody steps up not to Brandon Ayuk's level, but you can amalgamate that kind of production over a couple of different players. My issue with the theory isn't that it's not sound. It's simply that I don't think that there are a lot of teams in training camp who are looking to make a big splash trade for the upcoming season. Like if the 40, as I've said many times, like if the 49ers wanted to trade Brandon Aiyuk, he would have been traded before the draft, because then you can use the draft capital immediately. And if you're trading Brandon Aiyuk, there's not a lot of straight player for player trades. So if you're trading Brandon Aiyuk, you're trying to get back maybe a player, maybe two, but also draft capital. But that draft capital, like how much value do the 49ers have in that draft capital when you're trying to win the Super Bowl this year? So they would have to do something that's really rare, which is a player for player trade, and not just a player for player trade, but a high level player for player trade with a team that is willing to engage in what has been a fool's errand to this point. And that is in negotiating with Brandon Aiyuk. It's passing off the problem to somebody else who is more willing than you to get the job done. And I have a hard time believing there's a team out there like that. As much as Pittsburgh and as much as, Washington want to do it, like it's not as if the folks in Washington don't know Brandon Aiyuk and don't understand his value. The guy who runs the show, the last two guys who have run the show, the top two guys in that front office are former 49ers guys. They know Brandon Aiyuk. They know exactly how much value he has. And trust me, if they get the sense, and there's nothing else to infer but this sense, that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan don't think Brandon Aiyuk's worth what he's asking, they're going to second guess themselves if they give it to him, especially on a team in Washington that already has a couple of pretty good wide receivers. I mean, is Brandon Aiyuk an upgrade? Yeah, but it's marginal, especially when you look at that roster and they need massive upgrades in a lot of other places. I'm not sure that's an area to push draft capital and so many other things. So I'm skeptical of a trade ever happening. I've been skeptical of a trade happening since the end of the 7th round of the NFL draft. I just think Ayuk's going to have to show up and bet on himself and play it out at $14 million unless he wants to get reasonable with his contract demands. And I do think that the 49ers are willing to be reasonable with him. But as of right now, neither party's being reasonable and neither party has any reason to change their stance. So here we are.
I just kind of think if I'm the 49ers, I may want to give them a deadline just from the standpoint of like, hey, look, if we get it done by this date, then, here's our best offer. But if we don't get it done by this date, we want to focus on the season and let's have you play on the 5th-year option at 14.1 and we'll figure it out next year. Yeah. I actually think when you actually think about it, I mean, the assumption is they're going to sign Aiyuk to a deal and then he's going to have a big year and Debo's going to have a good year, but just not as big a year. And at the end of the year, they're going to say goodbye to Debo and, give bigger roles to Pearsall and Cowing and get down the road.
Right.
But then you look at Debo and the way he's working out right now, and who knows? Maybe he has the better year. What if all of a sudden he's healthy and he has a big year? A motivated Debo can be a very, very dangerous thing. Okay. If all of a sudden he's motivated, in some ways, if you thought there was a chance that Debo was going to really get motivated and really fire a hugely productive year that almost would demand that you re-sign him and bring him back, then isn't it better in that situation to have Aiyuk on the 5th-year option at $14.1 million, dangle the carrot in front of both guys, make them compete against each other, and then if whoever, if Debo's the better receiver, re-sign Debo. If Ayuk's the better receiver, re-sign Aiyuk, but push this decision off till next offseason. I'm not saying tag him for the next couple of years, but since you're kind of dangling the carrot on Debo, why not dangle the carrot on both of the guys and then also pit them against each other and see if, it's a cutthroat way to go about things. And I'm sure Aiyuk might get a little bent, but you know what? If he wants to play super hardball and he wants to do what's in his best interest, I don't know that you can blame the 49ers for doing what's in their best interest. Right. And I think you can make a really compelling argument that having Aiyuk on the 5th-year option is actually in their best interest.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think that the 49ers have that leverage and that they would be somewhat fools to not use it. And I think Brandon Aiyuk has to know that, which is why it's so surprising that Brandon Aiyuk and his representatives have been so steadfast on their number, because the 49ers are not going to meet that number. They told him they don't want him at that number. Like it is, it's kind of, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, but like Brandon Ayuk's not going to get what he wants from the San Francisco 49ers, no matter how many times he asks, because the San Francisco 49ers can do exactly as you laid out. And they can just say, play it there. And then we can franchise tag you and trade you, or we can just franchise tag you and keep you, or we can sign you to a new contract after all this is said and done. And that 5th year option is played out. The Deebo Samuel of it all is, I think, the area where I have some dissent. How much more Deebo Samuel, I mean, capital D, capital S, Deebo Samuel, are you going to get if you're the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, this is a guy who plays, pardon the parlance, balls to the wall. I mean, there is nothing being held back on the game when the game is on the field. Nothing held back to his detriment. And I think that the realistic outlook on Deebo Samuel is that his best football is probably behind him, and that just the way that we phrase if Deebo Samuel has a big year, like almost like it's found money, I think indicates that it would be imprudent for San Francisco to give him any sort of a serious long-term extension. So that means anything more than 2 years, which means effectively he's going to want to go somewhere else, to a team that is willing to do that, basically because they're so desperate to have him. The 49ers aren't that desperate to have him in the future. So even if he does go out and do what I expect him to do, which is have an absolutely monster year, that just benefits everybody. That just benefits the team that he's going to, because they're going to feel more comfortable about giving him the contract that he wants. It certainly benefits Deebo Samuel because he is proving to himself and everybody in the league that he is as good as it gets at whatever the hell position you want to say he plays. And it's good for the San Francisco 49ers because they can get more back in a trade for him. But ultimately, with the way that the salary cap is going to go and the way that Brock Purdy's contract is going to go, they have to choose between Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel, and choosing the 25-year-old who does not have a lot of wear and tear, who is not a better player than Deebo Samuel, but is ultimately more reliable and is someone that you can project to actually fulfilling the full terms of his contract, is one thing. And then there's Deebo Samuel, who basically plays like a human crash test dummy, who's 28 years old, already has 6 years of NFL wear and tear on his body. He's here for a good time, not for a long time. And I think the way that teams find themselves in situations where they were once winning and now they're no longer winning. And I look at a team like the Chargers recently, who didn't win much, but they just kept re-signing their guys who kept getting older. And then it doesn't fall off gradually. It falls off a cliff in the NFL because these guys took the wear and tear. And now you got Austin Eckler taking 42 steps to get a yard and looking like he's running in quicksand. And you got Keenan Allen having monster years and then getting injured every year. And you got, it just go down the line of all the guys that team re-upped and re-upped and re-upped because they were loyal to their star players. And then those players, and it's not as if they wanted this to happen, but they fell off the cliff. And now the Chargers are having to totally rebuild under Jim Harbaugh. And by the way, all this is happening when they have a supposed franchise quarterback in play. So the 49ers are smart enough, and they've proven time and time again that they would rather be a year early than a year late. With Deebo Samuel, it's a ticking time bomb. You got to be a year early on this. And if he has a big year, that's fantastic. Maybe it can spark a little bit of doubt in Brandon Aiyuk's mind if he plays on that 5th year option. Hey, they might keep him over me. That gets more out of Brandon Aiyuk. There's a lot of positives here for the 49ers. They might come across as dicks, but you know what? They might get the best out of their football team. I got no problem with being a dick, so long as you're getting the results. And in this situation, the 49ers, it might really work out for them. It really might. But I think they'll get the contract done. I really do.
Let's jump topics. Albert Breer says he thinks the Niners ought to sign Justin Simmons, who's a 4-time All-Pro safety. He leads the NFL in interceptions since he's been drafted. Niners are a little on the thin side safety-wise. They got Afonga coming off the torn ACL. He's vowing to be there for week 1. I saw another Bleacher Report article saying that Budda Baker is likely to be dealt, and had the Niners as one of the 2 or 3 teams that could have interest in Budda Baker. I guess what do you think the Niner mode is in improving the safety spot? Because, it's funny. A lot of times, there's the draft and there's free agency, then there's a draft, and there's a quiet period. But then usually there's also a handful of players that sign, it seems like in July, right as camp gets rolling, or sometimes even in August. And, the Niners have Malik Mustafa. They don't know exactly where Afonga is going to be. Brown's a second-year player. They're really thin after that. Do you think they're going to make a big play for a veteran safety? There's also guys like Richie Grant and Lewis Seen, who they say may wind up getting cut at the end of August at the cut down. You think they'll show patience there? How severe is their need at free safety?
It's dramatic. I mean, Larry, I'll just ask you straight up: who's their backup at free safety? If
is Jair the starter?
Yes. I mean, that's
so I kind of like Jair Brown, better in the box as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the backup is probably George Odom. That's who the backup was in minicamp.
So if you ask me how dire is the situation at free safety, I tell you it's extremely dire. It's George Odom is the backup dire. And I like George Odom. Don't get me wrong. He's a great guy and a good football player. The 49ers signed 2 dudes off the street before they let George Odom play safety last year. They signed a dude off a Disney cruise before they let George Odom play safety last year. They just gave George Odom a big new contract. They're not letting him play free safety. He's out there because the kickoff rules changed, and the 49ers freaked out because they didn't know what to expect, so they just made sure they got all the good special teamers to come on down. And honestly, pretty good move. But the situation's dire. I really like Jair Brown. I really like him as a free safety. But if the 49ers are going to play single high, as they have suggested that they will do by going back to sort of a strict cover 3 or their cover 3 basics that they got away from last year, to both a positive and a negative. If they are, in fact, a single high safety team again, a la the way they were under especially Robert Saleh, then Jair Brown is the second or third most important player on the defense. And as much as I like Jair Brown, even I'm like, that's probably too much. that's too much for the kid. And again, he's one ankle twist away from you having George Odom back there, and now you have to structure a defense to cover up for the guy who's supposed to be covering up for everybody else. It's not a functional operation. So it doesn't have to be Justin. It has to be anybody. They have to add a free safety, because as much as I do like Malik Mustafa, and as much as Hufanga thinks that he can play free safety, Mustafa is a box safety. I mean, maybe he can get back there and show me something. It's not as if we have any track record with the kid. But when you watch him at Wake Forest, you want him in the action. He is a Hufanga replacement. And Hufanga found himself in a lot of situations last year when the 49ers played a lot more too high, where he had to be the free safety. And that's how he tore his ACL. He got split out wide against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he got cooked so hard on a route that his knee exploded. He's not that kind of player. He's a strong side linebacker, which is what you are when you're a box safety in a cover 3 system. He's excellent at it. He made a Pro Bowl as that. I'm not knocking the guy. Both him and Mustafa, they're being put in the correct position for them. But what it does is it puts Jair Brown, who is a wonderful player, again, I'm very bullish on, but ultimately not totally convinced that he's the second coming of Earl Thomas or Ed Reed, which I don't think is a blasphemy here. You're putting so much on him on your defense that to not have a backup, to not have a reasonable backup is frankly asking for it. And when you have a guy like Justin Simmons out there, I don't care how washed he is compared to the Justin Simmons who is very well paid and well known throughout the league as being an exceptional player. I don't care how far off the cliff he came. You got to bring him in. And then you should probably bring in 2 or 3 more guys. You need as many backups as you can get at that spot, because if you cannot have your entire defense predicated on the play or the health of Jair Brown. That is a very, very dangerous game to play going into the season, especially one where you're trying to win the Super Bowl.
The guy who I'm on the lookout for at safety is Renardo Green. I just think that the numbers are going to make it very hard for him to get time on the corner. And yet I think he's got that free safety experience. And also he's got the trait that I think you really want is you don't want that coverage ability. It's like, it's much more of a coverage game now. So Renardo Green would not surprise me if he somehow sneaked into the mix at free safety, despite the fact we're all kind of thinking of him as a nickel corner or maybe an outside corner,
Right.
but definitely a corner.
Yeah.
I just think when they convene and they see the depth they have at corner and the lack of depth at safety and his experience at safety and his coverage ability as a free safety, he might give them something they're really looking for. I mean, the one thing about, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas that was so good is that Chancellor was such a thumper, but Thomas was such a great cover guy. He truly was a corner playing safety. And
he was so
that's an
cerebral. I mean,
advantage.
he saw everything. He could make the quarterback think he was doing one thing and then do another. Like, I'm a firm believer that in this modern passing league, that safeties are destiny. And I don't personally think that you can win running a cover 3. I don't think you can be a base cover 3 team in the modern NFL and do it. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out this upcoming season. Maybe they're overblowing it with getting back to our cover 3 roots. Maybe they changed their mind about 2 weeks into the season. I am just not of the belief. I think the cover 3 is too dissectable by the modern passing standards to be an effective every down look. But on that, going into Green's not running anything like that at Florida State. I mean, even Florida State, which is an exceptionally coached team, which is a rarity in the college game, but even Florida State, who is running intricate pro-level stuff on offense and defense, even they are basically just running cover 4 quarters every single play. And they're just getting 2 safeties. They're dropping them back. The cornerbacks are just riding for 25 yards. It's just keep everything in front of you. Let your linebackers do some work against the run. Hope that, you don't get too burned by the tight end over the middle, and just give up yards for free. And, you're just not getting burned over the top with the spread offense. That's basically what every team, save for Ohio State, and even they do it a lot now, is running. So safety is inarguably the hardest position to evaluate. I have an easier time evaluating quarterbacks and that black box of a situation than I do evaluating safeties, because they're just not running anything at the college level that looks anything like NFL stuff. And when you're a free safety in a cover 3, meaning you get the entire middle of the field and you have to make decisions, it's just as much about the cover ability, which has to be there to be great, as it is about just being cerebral and basically being a quarterback out there. And I think there's a very, very particular reason why Steve Wilkes, who I don't think did a very good job, but I can at least give him some deference on this one. He ran a lot of Tampa 2 last year. And the tenet of the Tampa 2 is that your middle linebacker goes back and essentially plays free safety, covers the middle of the field. And so we saw Fred Warner getting interceptions 35, 40 yards down the field because they're running Tampa 2. All that tells me is that they didn't trust their free safeties. Even with 2 high looks, they didn't trust their safeties to cover or to read the play correctly. So they had Fred back there doing it instead. It's a very dangerous game. And I don't think that a couple of playoff games, which Jair Brown barely played in until the Super Bowl, and then ultimately, one off season, is going to put Jair Brown in a situation to where now he is able to be not just a steady player, but like a game changer, because that's the standard when you're the single high safety in a cover 3. That I think about it all the time, Larry. I'm fascinated to see in training camp, because it's not the biggest question, because we got the Aiyuk stuff going on and there's a bunch of other stuff that's more sexy. But for me, I mean, I'm locked in on free safety. This could be a real problem real fast, and it might even be one right now.
There's a great article out right now online about the 4 most underrated NFL quarterbacks going into 2024. And they've got down here Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Jacoby Brissett. And it's a really good article, because they have some phenomenal numbers here. Okay. They're talking about Brock Purdy and how Chris Sims ranked him 17th overall. And they're describing him as a system quarterback, but system plus.
Yeah.
And Sims says he's a damn good athlete. He can scramble and make the throws. His feel, his touch, it's really good. But the thing that's really interesting, he said Purdy executes Shanahan's offense as well as any quarterback can. Last year, he was 16.5% above his expected completion rate on intermediate passes, which are defined as passes 10 to 19 yards in the air. No one else was even close. His 55% drop back success rate led all quarterbacks, and his adjusted EPA per dropback is miles ahead of second place Patrick Mahomes since the start of the 2022 season. And Purdy has done wonderfully in avoiding negative plays. Only 4 quarterbacks had lower pressure to sack rates in 2023. So it is interesting. He does a lot of things really, really well. And, it's just, I think people just, and I kind of understand. I mean, they look at him and they, at first blush, they're like, this guy doesn't look the part, and he's got narrow shoulders and this and that. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what he does.
I mean, it's sometimes it's really as simple, and there's a big difference between watching a guy on TV, and I'm not here to shame anybody who can only, watch it on TV, because heaven knows I watch more football on TV than I watch in person. But there's a big difference between, and I'm not even counting practice on this, but when you're in that press box and you have that bird's eye view of the field and you can see the entire play develop, you pretty much figure out who's a good quarterback and who's not pretty fast. I mean, when you got that natural all 22, you feel it. There's something visceral to the level of quarterback play. And I mean, listen, we were in the press box last year when Joe Burrow was ripping the 49ers up, and we were all it was pretty clear from the get-go. Oh, this guy's pretty fucking good. This guy's pretty fucking awesome. And Brock Purdy, the amount of times that, I know there's no cheering in that press box, and it's not cheering, but the amount of audible gasps and wows and whoa, what a plays that he gives, you never heard that stuff with Jimmy. You never heard that stuff with CJ Beathard. You did sometimes hear it with Nick Mullins, but it was more like an attaboy. The expectations were so low that anything positive actually turned into something big. You hear it with a lot of other quarterbacks. You hear it with the really good ones that we talk about all the time. And the guy just makes plays. He makes plays at every level of the field, inside, out. He makes plays with his feet. He's in perfect control of the offense. I would love him to be as big as Josh Allen and to run like Lamar Jackson and to have the arm of Patrick Mahomes. I'd also like a Lamborghini in my lot and to have, 15 more bedrooms and not pay any taxes. There's a lot. You can't always get what you want. And I'll tell you this, man. I've watched Brock Purdy play Dak Prescott in the same building 4 or 5 times now. Not once have I thought to myself, I'd rather have Dak Prescott. And I am a harsh critic. So and by the way, I don't disagree with the assessment that Dak Prescott is underrated. I think he probably gets a bad rap, and that's because he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. I get that. Being the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers carries a pretty similar weight. It's not as intense, but people talk about the 49ers. That's a national brand. People give a damn. You got to force in some Jaguars talk. People are willing to talk about the Niners no matter where you're at in the country. They're always on First Take. And so there is an expectation when you're following Joe and Steve and even Jeff Garcia and all, when you're following great quarterbacks, there is an expectation. But this guy can flat out play. I can throw every number at you. I can point out, over expected. I could go full Lombardi on this one and try to give you every analytical thing. And I've done it. I'm tired of doing it, Larry. I'm tired of doing it. If you can't buy a ticket, come and shadow me in the press box, watch this guy play quarterback for a full game and tell me he's not a good NFL quarterback, that he's not a plus NFL quarterback, that he doesn't help your team win. Because I've watched him play Geno Smith. I've never once thought I want Geno Smith. I watched him play Kyler Murray. There's certainly some oohs and ahs when you play Kyler Murray. Give me Brock Purdy. And then to know how he handles himself and the professionalism he carries with him everywhere and his total comprehensive understanding of Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is the most difficult aspect of all of this. Knowing that from being in the locker room and talking to people, it's to the point where I'm not even questioning the money. I'm not even questioning the money. And I think it's absolutely ludicrous that people are out here still trying to dissect, trying to find a reason that this guy's not good when it's just so obvious to anyone who's actually paying attention. And I hate to gatekeep like that, but God damn, and we're going to just do it forever, I guess, because people never change their mind.
The guy's played about 25 games and he's had 1 or 2 bad ones. I mean, it's he's played a lot of games. He's had very few. He had very few games like Christmas night against the Ravens. Everything else has been very successful. If I say number one contender in the NFC to the 49ers, who comes to mind? I mean, the Eagles going into last year lost Shane Steichen, lost Jonathan Gannon, and then replaced them with Brian Johnson and Sean Desai, and then replaced Desai with Matt Patricia late in the year. Patricia wasn't a whole lot better. Now they've got Kellen Moore as the OC and Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator, so they're quite a bit better. They added, a lot of talent: Devin White, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson,
Saquon,
Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
I mean, they really had a nice offseason. And then there's Green Bay and Detroit. And we can debate who's improving faster. The Packers, Jordan Love just got incredibly hot as the year went on and started looking like an elite quarterback. Then made a crucial mistake in the Niner game, and the Niners got the win. And then Detroit's coming, and they got a tremendous all-around team, and they drafted like 5 different added 5 different corners to try to alleviate their biggest weakness, which was cornerback play.
Yeah.
Then there's the Rams, and the Rams. The Rams, quietly are pretty good as well. I mean, last year they came up with Kobe Turner and Byron Young, and those guys combined for 17 sacks. This year they drafted Jared Verse. They added, Braden Fisk and Cameron Curl and Cam Kinchins and Kenny Logan and Tre'Davious White all in their secondary. They had the number 8 scoring offense in the league last year with Stafford, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, Puka. Tyler Higbee. They've upgraded the offensive line now. They added Blake Corum. Sean McVay's talking Corum up quite a bit in the spring.
Yep.
What do you think? Rams, Lions, Packers, Eagles. Who's the number one contender in the NFC to the Niners?
The right answer is the Lions. And it's 1 year. They got one shot at this. It's the Lions. I'm going to tell you, so long as Nick Sirianni is the head coach of the Eagles, I do not fear them. Can't fear them.
I thought you were going to maybe go with Green Bay, but you're going Lions.
Here's my issue with Green Bay. I could eat my words very easily.
I worry about Love more than I worry about Goff.
I am not as Love is a very low floor, very high ceiling possibility. Love sucked up until about Thanksgiving. He was really bad. He was out. They were done.
They upset the Lions in Detroit on Thanksgiving, and he kind of took off from there.
And when you look at the changes that LaFleur made, they started max protecting, and they started running limited routes and just basically running 8 plays, very simple stuff. They pared down the playbook immensely, and they had 7 guys in blocking every snap. And because Jordan Love has a cannon of an arm, and because they have a hell of a wide receiver core, maybe not that top end guy, but my God, they got like 7 number 2s. Because of that, they were able to take advantage of a fairly weak schedule down the stretch and turn Jordan Love into something. The book is out now. And the 49ers, for as crappy as they were in the first half of that game, they were exceptional in the second. Even Steve Wilkes could read the book. He should have read it before the game started, but at halftime, they were able to make some simple adjustments, and they made Jordan Love look quite in over his head. And I'm not sure that won't be the story of the 2024 season for Jordan Love, because you just cannot run an offense that simple. And with 7 blockers, it's the 60s. Even Don Carell wouldn't even do that. Like, it's ancient stuff. It's 60 years old crap. So I'm fascinated to see it has to evolve. They won't run that same stuff again. Can he evolve? And how will other teams take advantage when he's in an environment that he has not been successful in up until this point, which is basically anything outside of that super pared down offense? So I'm not buying the Packers right now. If I lose, I lose, but I'm not buying them right now.
I mean, they did get Josh Jacobs. They added Xavier McKinney. They've got a lot of great young weapons.
Exceptionally, I love the way that the Green Bay Packers run their operation. I don't trust the quarterback. I just don't.
I hear you. He's talented, though, and those tight ends are elite. I'll say this. If Christian Watson gets consistent and gets healthy and stays on the field and looks like a big play guy, they're going to be scary. They're going to be scary.
No, there's a very real situation where it is obvious that they're the number one threat. That,
Yeah,
I mean, if my fears about Jordan Love, and obviously I don't have a dog in the fight, but like if what I think could happen with Jordan Love does not come true, then yes, it's the Packers. But I do think that we need to mention the Falcons in this conversation as well.
Wow.
I don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to have at the beginning of the year, but I like Michael Penix a lot, and he's somebody that I wouldn't mind playing for a couple games to start, get into Cousins, whatever. But they have so much talent on the offensive end that I'm certain will be utilized now because they don't have Arthur Smith essentially sabotaging his team at every step as to prove some point. I don't get that guy. Another reason that I'll fade the Steelers all day, every day. Arthur Smith is in charge over there on the offense.
When Cousins was playing at a really, really high level when he went down last year, he was averaging almost 300 yards a game, completing 70%, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. You look at some of those receivers he's got right now. Young Kyle Pitts, young Drake London. They picked up Rondale Moore, Darnell Mooney. Raheem Morris is going to be feeding Bijan Robinson. You would think quite a bit.
Fix that defense. They've done a really nice job in the draft and in free agency with that defense. There was a long way to go.
They're good on all 3 levels.
But Raheem is perhaps the best defensive coordinator in football.
They need a pass rush. That's what they need. They passed. They went with Penix and they passed on Dallas Turner, and they really needed an edge rusher.
I get that. You're not wrong, but I do think that who else is going to win that division? I mean, are you in on Baker Mayfield? I'm not buying it.
No. I mean, Tampa has won the NFC South the last couple of years, but they've been hovering right around 500. And last year, the Buccaneers had the fewest rushing yards per game, and then they lost their offensive coordinator Dave Canales, who accepted the Panthers head coaching position. So I think Tampa, I think they backslide a little bit. I like Atlanta to win that division.
There's a team right under the Rams real fast too that I do think needs to be mentioned. You and I are not Caleb Williams guys. But the Bears are sitting at plus 1,600 to win the NFC. And with the way that defense played in the second half of last year and with the talent around Caleb Williams, if you and I are wrong, which of course we're not, but if you and I are wrong about Caleb Williams, that's an interesting number. That's an interesting team. And by the way, a very dangerous team to be playing in week 14 if that kid ever figures it out, which again, I don't think he will. I don't like the pick. I don't think the Bears are going anywhere, but they have the infrastructure around him. It's not as if they were the number 1 pick because they sucked. No, that's the Carolina Panthers pick. They just got it because the Carolina Panthers suck so hard they traded away their first-round pick on top of their first-round pick to get Bryce Young, who, by the way, Carolina plus 10,000. So not going to pick.
I mean, I think Ryan Pohl's a good young executive. He came from Kansas City, I believe. He's there in Chicago now. But you know what? I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think the Bears. Everybody thinks, oh, the Bears are coming. The Bears are coming. Oh, the Bears are really coming. And almost everybody that you talk to, the first thing they'll say when you talk about they're talking about the Bears are coming, they always go Caleb Williams and then they go Rome Odunze. I think both those guys are going to be busts.
Yeah.
But I think the Bears are coming anyway because I like the Bears' backup quarterback, Austin Reed from Western Kentucky, and I like Tyson Bagent as well.
Yeah,
Bagent from Shepherd and Reed from Western Kentucky. Reed's real. I like Reed. I think Williams is going to fall on his face. I think Odunze is going to fall on his face. I don't think it's going to matter because I think Keenan Allen is going to have a tremendous first year in Chicago. DJ Moore,
12 weeks, and then he'll get injured.
I think they've got some other receivers there, Velus Jones, and they've got some guys. I mean, Freddie Swain, Dante Pettis. I don't know about that, but they've got in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, they have true number 1 receivers. They've bulked up their offensive line. You've got Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet. And Mercedes Lewis. They got some decent tight ends. And then running back wise, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
They got some nice running backs. I mean, they're and then
awesome.
Defensively, look at that defense. I mean, you've got Montez Sweat on the front line, And, they drafted Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. I kind of like him.
Yep.
They drafted Austin Booker this year out of Kansas. I kind of like him.
Got one of the best corners in the NFL.
Yeah, there's no question that Jalen Johnson is a great player, and Tyreek Stevenson is a really good young corner as well. So, yeah, they've got a up and coming defense that's getting better. But I think it's everybody's expecting Adunze to be a stud and Caleb to be a stud.
Right.
I think those guys are going to bust, but I do think Chicago's still coming, despite the fact those guys are going to bust.
I'll leave that at that. I would just say it's the Lions this year. They got one shot before Jared Goff's number gets totally ridiculous and they have to actually start losing some talent. And I could be wrong. It could end up being the Packers just because Jordan Love proves me wrong. But again, so long as the Super John, Nick Sirianni's the head coach of the Eagles, not buying
him. Let's see here. Let me throw a couple of these chats and then we'll switch over. I want to talk a little Warriors as well.
Yeah.
We've got a couple starred chats. This one, Mitchell and Ness. He says, the Niners drafted Zach Frazier. I wouldn't have complained about the rest of the draft. They could have drafted him in the first or traded up in the second for him. Mitchell and Ness, I'm with you. I was a big Zach Frazier guy. He said they did the dumb trade up for Garendo. They should have did it for Frazier. I agree. John Davis says, I like trading BA to the.
Is that Zach Frazier tweeting in? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Did we mention the center position?
John Davis says, I like trading BA to the Pats for Christian Gonzalez. Christian gives us a solid defensive backfield. That's the thing. If you said to me right now, would you rather have Aiyuk or Christian Gonzalez? Christian Gonzalez is I think a number one corner, and Aiyuk is really, really good, but they have other receivers. I'd rather have Surtain because I think Surtain's more of a sure thing than Christian Gonzalez. But if I could get Christian Gonzalez in a third or something like that, a Christian Gonzalez at a fifth, I would do it. I absolutely would.
Didn't Christian Gonzalez totally wreck his shoulder last year?
He did get hurt. He did get hurt, but he was great before he went out.
Yeah, we've only seen 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to take Brandon Aiyuk, who I know is a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. I don't think a fifth rounder is going to change my mind.
49er_throwback says Purdy and Love will be quarterback rivals for years to come. All right, I want to get your couple thoughts on the Warriors before we get out of here. We're 57 minutes into our live stream. Welcome to the Krueger Show, everybody. Brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krueger sent you. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description and use that promo code Krueg. Krueg, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles as well for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. Check them out in Pacific Grove along the Monterey Peninsula. And thanks to them for sponsoring the show as well. All right, let's get into the Warriors real quick. A lot of interesting stuff around the Warriors. Klay Thompson moved on. Dunleavy said he was desperate to get him back. Steph said he was desperate to get him back. Kerr said he was desperate to get him back. And now we're finding out that Joe Lacob kind of led the charge to drive Klay out and just didn't communicate like he wanted Klay. And Klay told Steph, hey, don't get involved. Don't exert any power. Don't exert any influence. I guess he told the guys about a week ago. And Klay Thompson jumps to the Dallas Mavericks. What did you think? What have you thought of the Warriors pick so far? Lindy Waters III on draft night, Quentin Post, a center from Boston College on draft night, a shooter. They added D'Anthony Melton. They added slow-mo Kyle Anderson.
That's right.
I
the
think
Buddy Hield thing will get done.
The Buddy Hield sounds like a sign and trade, maybe for a second-round pick, something like that.
Second-round pick. So whatever. What do you
think about what they've done?
If we're being very strict about what they've done, they've taken Klay Thompson and they've turned him and the Chris Paul contract that they waived. They got back a $16 million roughly trade exception for Klay Thompson and a second-round pick. And they have now turned that trade exception and the salary cap space saved into Melton, Hield, and slow-mo. I got to give Mike Dunleavy some credit for this. They absolutely botched the first part of this whole free agency process. to get
How
nothing.
so?
Well, I can appreciate that he was handed a pretty shitty deck and that he was handed 2 assets in the Chris Paul contract, $30 million that would have been guaranteed last Friday. They moved it back a little bit. And then Klay Thompson. He was given 2 assets that didn't have much value. He received nothing back for Chris Paul. He couldn't make a deal for Chris Paul. And that is a missed opportunity because Chris Paul was Jordan Poole in a first-round pick this time last year. So you inherit Jordan Poole, and obviously we know why Jordan Poole had to leave the team, but he's also a 22, 23-year-old who averaged 20 points in the NBA, and there is potential there. Not that it will ever be achieved with Washington, but there was potential there. And a first-round pick, and you turned it into Chris Paul, and then you were able to do nothing else with that. That is bad roster management. And then with Klay Thompson, you didn't handle it the way that it needed to be handled. They didn't put the Godfather offer in front of him. Now, if Joe Lacob's saying don't do it, Mike Dunleavy needs to put his foot on the ground and say, actually, we're going to do this.
Supposedly, the last offer that from Clay's camp was 2 years, $20 million, and Golden State turned it down.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that comes out now that I don't put a lot of credence into.
You don't believe that reporting?
No, I don't. I haven't, you know what? I'll be more specific. I haven't heard anything quite like that. And so I am reluctant to engage on that point with salience. So again, shitty hand, but ultimately to take those 2 assets and only turn them into a trade exception and a couple of second-round draft picks, yeah, one of which was their own, is not good roster management. It is good roster management on the flip side to take what is now a larger mid-level exception and go out and get DeAnthony Melton, who I'm a little lukewarm on if he was worth that full mid-level exception, but he is.
What is he? Is he a 1? Is he a 2?
He's a 2. He's an elite perimeter defender. Basically, he is GP2 that doesn't play power forward and is probably injured just as much, but he can shoot the 3 a lot easier. He was also 6th worst in the NBA at shooting 2s, so that's something we get to look forward to. I was a little bit stunned that he was a full 12.7 guy, but they did it, and he is an A+ defender on the perimeter, and that's something that really matters when you're playing next to Steph Curry, who is not that at all. So you need somebody like that. And that's what Klay used to be for Steph, and obviously certainly has not been since the injury. And Andrew Wiggins has decided that that's not his bag anymore either. So they needed to get that guy.
Yeah, I like Hield. I like Melton. I wasn't as big a fan of the Kyle Anderson pickup. I don't like watching Kyle Anderson. He the slow-mo thing is an appropriate nickname.
Yeah.
He's more effective than anything. His shot is brutally ugly.
It's slow.
It's slow. It's out front.
Larry, just think of him as extremely deliberate, which is obviously when you think about the modern NBA, something you want to be.
I'm just not a fan of watching him, and now I'm going to have to watch him every night, and that's kind of bugs me. But I like Buddy Hield. I think Buddy Hield. I know Kings fans are like, oh, he's going to suck, and I realize he was up and down in Sacramento, and bad shot selection and several other things haunted him there.
Indiana just dumped his ass. I
just think that Buddy Hield is a good fit for the Warriors and playing with Steph. As far as if you're looking for somebody cheap who can really shoot the ball, he's a career 40% 3-point shooter. He can move away from the ball and get himself open. In some ways, I think he can get his own shot better than Klay. And I just think that Hield in a ball movement, body movement, Warrior type situation, I think he could have a little bit of a career renaissance here. I like Hield and I like Melton. Not as big a fan of Anderson.
I think Anderson is going to be a wonderful fit in the offense, especially with the second unit. So what you lost is Paul and Klay, and listen, I don't have a problem.
Missed out on Paul George because the Clippers wouldn't play ball.
There was not that. It wasn't that serious. I mean, the Clippers why would they help the Golden State Warriors unless the Golden State Warriors are going to seriously help the Clippers? Like, it's just, this is why teams that are rivals don't make trades, because they have to live with the results day in and day out. If you ship a dude to the other side of the country, you can spend days where you forget about your mistake. and you don't have to worry about it. If you're the Clippers and you ship Paul George to the Warriors, and now the Warriors are coming into the Intuit Dome with all of its technology and kicking your ass night in, night out, whatever, how many times you play in the Pacific Division, that's a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow, unless you feel like you won that trade. And by the way, the good example would be like Boston and the Nets way back in the day with Garnett and Pierce. Boston's like, yeah, you can have them. We're winning. And ultimately, it took a long time, but they did win off of that trade. So I think that they probably treaded water. You can make the argument because of their defensive improvement, with Melton being the anchor of that, Slow-Mo being not terribly far behind, that they are a little bit better than what they were. But they've also traded off the fact that they don't have a backup point guard now. And at some point, that will come back and bite them in the ass if they don't fix it. This is a team that finished 10th in the Western Conference last year. I know it's very fashionable from some folks to say that actually they were so much better, Larry, if Draymond doesn't get suspended and if this doesn't happen. Draymond will always find a way. If it's not a suspension, it's an injury. If it's not, like, to presume the best case scenario for the Golden State Warriors at this juncture of Steph Curry and Draymond Green is stupid. It's strictly stupid. It's not to say that they're going to be shitty. It's not to say they're going to be bad. It's simply to say that you cannot expect the best case scenario with deeply veteran players. And so, if it's not a suspension, it's a twisted knee. And if Steph is struggled a bit last year, what's going to happen now that he has new guys that he's playing with? And by the way, not a single one of them demands a double team. Even Clay at times could demand a double team last year. If people thought Clay was on, they had two men on him because he was still one of the great catch and shoot guys of all time. I'm sorry to Buddy Hield. That's just not going to happen.
Is there going to be fallout from the fact that there's talk that, Lakeup and Clay went golfing and supposedly, he basically told him, hey, we want to go in a different direction. I mean, I don't know if that's happened or not, but do you think that there's going to be any fallout from the fact that, a couple things have been reported that maybe Draymond and Clay were not necessarily happy that Wiggins and Poole got taken care of after they won the title. Is there going to, the Warriors have had great team chemistry. It does seem like Joe Lakeup and Steve Kerr and Mike Dunleavy are not necessarily going in the same direction. It sounded like Kerr and Dunleavy really wanted Clay back, where it sounded like Joe didn't. So I kind of wonder if they're seeing eye to eye on kind of what their vision of this team is going forward.
And people wonder why Bob Myers quit.
Yeah, seriously.
Strictly. I will defend Joe Lakeup on this. The man bought the team, and the team started winning. And it started winning big. And I think that if we forget that, it becomes very, very easy to get very, very aggressive about how he is currently running his family operation. Okay? It's one thing when you're drafting Alan Smiley-Geach as a birthday present to your kid.
Right.
It's a whole other thing when you are running legends who still have something to offer out of town. And I know that's an oversimplification. But again, this isn't tiddlywinks here. This isn't let's toss a second on Alan Smiley-Geach. This isn't, let's see what the kids got. This isn't sending your boys over to Europe for an extended trip on, the south of France so that they can scout some 17-year-old. Like, there are levels to this. And let's not forget that Joe Lakeup, Bob Myers deserves a lot of blame on this too, but Joe Lakeup was very adamant about drafting James Wiseman. He thought James Wiseman was going to be not just the next face of the Warriors, but one of the next faces of the league. He was totally convinced. And to which it was almost impossible to get dissent in. Bob was in on it too. Everyone was in on it. I'm not saying there was strict dissent, but at a certain point, it just became not a point of
just a misevaluation. It's just the way it is. They misevaluated.
Yeah. So, and if you want to point to all the ways that this thing fell off the way that it has, I think a lot of people point to the punch. I understand that logic. I think a lot of people point to Klay Thompson tearing his ACL and then following up with an Achilles tear. I understand where you're coming from there. They had the opportunity of all opportunities to extend this thing out Spurs style. And is it unfair that the ping pong balls didn't bounce and give him Ant Edwards? Sure. Is it shitty that they got the number 2 pick in a year where you did not want the number 2 pick because it was a bad draft that made this year's draft actually look kind of okay? Yeah. But they didn't maximize it. And I'll pat myself on the back. Me and my man Wes Goldberg, who was covering the Warriors for the Mercury News at the time, we were doing 5 articles and 2 podcasts, and you couldn't have found a minute on those shows and in those articles where we weren't saying, this is a mistake. Do not take James Wiseman. Do not do this.
Well,
and
I mean,
they did
the big man is always riskier, and his hands just weren't there. His toughness wasn't there. He just wasn't a killer. By the way, he did get a new contract today with Indiana Pacers, so he'll be there for the next couple of years. Now the Warriors are talking about making it. He will not.
No, he'll show up to the Indiana Pacers, but he's not going to be hanging around for the next couple of years. They're going to can his ass about halfway through this season.
Yeah, well, that's possible. There's a lot of talk about the Warriors going after Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz, and Danny Ainge is open to moving him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Ainge always wins all these deals. He always wants a slew of picks, and there's talk that he wants a Mikal Bridges type deal with 5 number 1s. And yet, Tim Montemayor, who used to work here in the Bay Area, now has a show in Utah. I don't know if he has sources, but I know he does a show in Utah, and he's been reporting today that Jonathan Kuminga is not part of the deal.
No, he isn't.
And that the Warriors are trying to close in on a deal for Markkanen. I think they're offering Moody and Podziemski, and it might be Looney or Peyton, and like lots of picks. I guess the question is this. I mean, Moody and Podziemski are already first-round picks. So if you give them 3 first-round picks and you give them those 2 guys, technically you give them 5 first-round picks. If you give them 5 first-round picks and those 2 guys, now you're giving them 7 first-round picks. It seems to me that if Utah is centered on the idea that he's walking at the end of the year and they're not going to be able to sign him, that Podziemski and Moody, a couple former first round picks, and maybe 3 first round picks probably gets it done. I've been reading that maybe the Utah was holding out for a 4th, and the Warriors are trying to maybe get a 3rd team involved to maybe help satisfy the Jazz for what they're asking for. But what do you think? I mean, if the Warriors are able to get Lauri Markkanen without trading Jonathan Kuminga, that's a pretty nice basketball team they've got there then at that point. What do you think?
Well, it's Lauri Markkanen or bust for these guys. And I wrote that this morning for the Merc. Like there's a lot of other names that people talk about on, okay, I say that this team has been treading water. That's fine. It's still a team that can maybe make the play-in tournament. What was the issue with last year's team? It was pretty obvious that they didn't have a number 2. There was no one to take the stress off of Steph on the day that he wasn't there or the day that he wasn't playing. There was no number 2. They had plenty of number 3s, but there was no number 2. And Lauri Markkanen is a number 2. Would I prefer him to be a number 3? You bet. But he's a number 2 in this situation for the Warriors. If you think about the other guys who are possible, like a Brandon Ingram or a Zach
Wouldn't
LaVine.
mind that. Wouldn't mind Brandon Ingram. LaVine's a little bit more beat up.
And the LaVine costs a lot. And so now you're having
to player with knee problems.
You're having to send out. I mean, I don't want to get too nerdy here. I'll do it if you ask me, but I don't want to get too nerdy.
Do it.
They are hard capped at the first apron of the luxury tax line. So the idea of trading for a Zach LaVine means that a lot of money has to go out as well. So now we're talking about certainly Andrew Wiggins just to make whole on a deal for a Zach LaVine. And I'm with you. He gets numbers. He does not affect winning. And by the way, I would note, I don't think Brandon Ingram affects winning either. And I don't think he fits the Warriors system in the least bit. The reason
he played for Kerr on the internet in the Olympics or something, right? And Kerr, he fell out of Kerr's rotation, so maybe he's not a good fit.
the reason that the Pelicans are trying to trade him is because there were a lot of times last year where they had Zion and Valanciunas on the floor at the same time. And by the way, Willie Green, former Warriors assistant, head coach of the Pelicans, Jaron Collins, he came over from Golden State. It's not as if these guys don't have communication. But Brandon Ingram gets the ball inside of a system that they wanted to be rather Warriors-like in New Orleans. And they already have two non-shooters in Valanciunas, who would be in the high post, and then you're putting Zion oftentimes in the low post if he's not running the high pick and roll. And so you'd give the ball to Ingram on the wing, running a floppy action or an Iverson cut to something of that effect. You're running the double screens off the perimeter. And Ingram, instead of just running what we would see as the Warriors offense, hanging out on the perimeter, taking his open shot, he would always put the ball on the floor and try to dribble to the mid-range. He doesn't operate inside an offense. He operates inside of his offense, and that offense starts the second he gets the ball. And so now you had two guys. You were already at a disadvantage because you were playing two non-shooters, and now Brandon Ingram's like, no, I'm not about this floor spacing situation at all. This is the Warriors' problem. They were oftentimes last year playing two non-shooters. Sometimes they're playing 3 or 4 non-shooters. And so Steph Curry has the ball, and there's no space for him to go. He can't go into the lane. There's a bunch of his own dudes hanging out there, and their defenders are with him. So they need floor spacing. That is why Buddy Hield is a nice pickup after Klay Thompson. It's why Slow-Mo, who can just stand in the corner, you need as much time as you can get if you're Slow-Mo, but like he can space the floor. Melton can shoot the 3. He can space the floor. He shot 40% 2 years ago. Lauri Markkanen doesn't play a lick of defense. Can't really score off of the dribble or at least get to the mid-range. He can drive, he'll dunk, and he'll put an ass in somebody and post somebody up every now and again. He's pretty good at it. But Lauri Markkanen spaces the floor. Yeah. Lauri Markkanen fits the Warriors.
He's a deep-range
offense.
big man.
That's right. And when you're playing with Draymond Green, who can't space the floor, you have to have someone who can. If you're playing with Jonathan Kuminga, who can't space the floor, you have to have that. Lauri Markkanen fits what the Warriors need, and he's $18 million. You only have to be within $7.5 million if you're the Warriors under these new CBA rules. So you only have to give up in salary one of Looney or GP2. And I would argue that both of them have been made wholly expendable by the current roster moves. So there's one thing I want to mention here, and then I'll shut the hell up. I and so many others are mentioning the Mikal Bridges trade because it did set a new standard. I think if we remove the Mikal Bridges trade from our collective consciousness and we think back to a much more similar situation to Lauri Markkanen, it happened this past trade deadline, just before. The Pacers traded for Pascal Siakam. Now, they're both power forwards, kind of different games. Both of them are, fringe all-stars. They made the all-star team, but not all NBA caliber players. And they're both excellent at the thing that they are excellent at and kind of fall apart in some other spots. Pascal Siakam gets traded from Toronto to Indiana. Toronto knew they were not going to re-sign him. And that's why they got as much as they could for him at the trade deadline. That included 3 first-round picks, a couple of good young players, but nothing special, and a couple of seconds. That seems like a more realistic trade package for the Warriors. Now, I am aware that they have put a lot of picks already into the coffer. They have a lot of picks to offer. I think they can offer 25, 27, 29, 31, and a swap in 26, 28, and then 30 is a little wonky because technically that was part of the Jordan Poole trade. But they can throw in 6 and get away with it. 4.5. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it with those swaps. I think they can get this done for the Pascal Siakam deal because they'll throw in Podziemski. But I'll flatly say this. Jonathan Kuminga is not getting traded for anything less than a number 1 caliber player. And Lauri Markkanen is a wonderful offensive player. He's nowhere near number 1. He would fulfill a lot of things for the Warriors. He would be the number 2 they need. That would take this team from a team that could make the play-in tournament to a team that should be in the top 6 in the Western Conference standings at the end of the year. That's a big jump.
So it's gonna be interesting because there's a lot of teams that want Markkanen. Supposedly the Warriors, Kings, Spurs, T-Wolves, and Pelicans are all among the teams expressing interest in Lauri Markkanen.
It's really Spurs and Warriors. And the Spurs can legitimately make a better offer, but I'm not sure if the Spurs are terribly keen to make the offer. And you mentioned
Kings don't want to trade Keegan Murray. That's
I get that.
The Kings hang up is they don't want to trade Keegan, and obviously the Warriors hang up is they don't want to trade Kuminga. Minnesota's hang up is they don't have anybody. Money.
San Antonio's not going to trade Vassell, so they might throw in a Jeremy Sochan or somebody like that, but they're not going to throw in their top asset. You're not going to get
they're saying the Spurs may trade Steven Castle, so that would be interesting. And then the Jazz may ask the Hawks, ask for the Hawk picks if they made a deal. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's going to be interesting. I mean, how do the Warriors, force themselves to the front of the line and still hold on to Kuminga?
There's one
but if
way
they can hold on to Kuminga and add Markkanen, that's going to be, I would say if you could add Kuminga and add Markkanen, I think they're a playoff team for sure.
There's one way. They have to tamper like hell and get Lauri Markkanen to demand the trade. They have to tamper like hell and get Lauri Markkanen to say, I'm not re-signing with you guys in Utah. And I'm doing it. And by the way, if it was somebody other than Lauri Markkanen, I'd feel a lot better about that plan. But Europeans don't play that game. Kids who came up in AAU, they know the politics game left, right, and center. These European guys, they're too nice. They're too decent people. It's really hilarious. Like, you think about all of the big-time European players. When you put that max contract offer or a fair contract offer in front of them, it doesn't matter what market you're in. They sign them. They sign them. And then you look at all these guys who came up through the AAU system in America, and you put the big contract offer in front of them, and they're like, actually, I don't like this market very much. You need to trade me. And so getting Lauri Markkanen to be a disgruntled employee, which is so easy if you got an American or North American player, a little bit tougher because the guy grew up in Finland and a decent folk out there, not privy to the AAU culture.
Some people say he really likes Salt Lake, so I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to leave. Maybe he doesn't want to leave.
In which case they need to sign him.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like they're, that they're like, it sounds more like they want a bounty of picks and they want to sign him.
That's right.
I think Ainge is, won before. He knows what it takes to win, and he knows that they're not going to win in Utah unless they get a bevy of assets and pile them up. And
they're not winning anytime soon. He's 27 years old. You need to send him to a place that's on the right timeline.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big part of it. Mitchell and Ness says, can we trade Wiggins instead of Pods? What happens in this scenario to Andrew Wiggins? He was supposed to go for Paul George. It didn't happen. It sounds like the Warriors have been offering him around. Nobody wants him. I actually, to me, it's like he's a distressed asset, right? And there's all this, attach a first-round pick to him and attach this, attach that. How about this? How about don't attach a first-round pick to him and just trade him for another distressed asset? And that's
how they got him.
I would, if I were the Warriors, I'd think long and hard about trying to get Ben Simmons or somebody like that. I mean, he's a distressed, the thing about Wiggins is he makes 26, but he's got 3 years left. Thing about Simmons is he makes 40, but he's got 1 year left. I mean, and if you did have a bunch of shooters like Healed around, otherwise, what are you going to do? What are you going to get for Wiggins? Could they get Cameron Johnson out of Brooklyn?
No, you can't.
So what's out there?
And also, they don't want.
Did they get Herder out of Sac?
That's a distressed asset.
Yeah, I'm just saying they got to find.
The issue is you're also
that's
talking.
What you got to look for.
There's a difference between a distressed asset and an asset that we know is just not very good. Like, that's the flip side. Like, you're right. Like, Andrew Wiggins is a distressed asset because we've seen him be the second best player on a championship team.
Yeah,
and we can't understand.
He's not hurt.
And we can't understand why he's not good.
He doesn't have a bad attitude either. It's like he's not a police blotter guy. Doesn't have a bad attitude. Not hurt. Not old. He's just kind of.
He sometimes doesn't show up to work
drifting.
For a couple of months.
He needs a change of scenery. That's what he needs.
I guess. Legitimately, it seems as if he needs the stability of the Golden State Warriors more than the Golden State. There's a weirdness to Andrew Wiggins. I'm not sure that's his fault, but there's a weirdness to Andrew Wiggins. The issue is if you're talking about distressed assets, like the Ben Simmons one, at least gets the mind rolling. But like,
I just am intrigued by watching.
Some bitch don't play.
Yeah, but no, he doesn't. But I'll say this: if you said to me, where would be a great spot for Ben Simmons to play. Stop trying to make this guy anything that he isn't and just let him be what he is, which is he's a 6'10" guy who could play the point.
Yeah.
Surround him with some shooters like Steph Curry, like this kid Waters, like Markkanen, and Buddy Hield.
One of those things is not.
And then all of a sudden, just let Simmons run the point. Let's see if he can find some guys on the perimeter. Well, I'd rather watch Ben Simmons, even though he's got all kinds of flaws in his game, than watch 48 games of Andrew Wiggins at 75%.
I buy that. I do think that a lot of people are like, why don't we just trade Wiggins? You're right. You have to attach something, probably a first-round pick, to get off of that contract and get anything worthwhile. Unless you take somebody
with a big contract back.
And so it kind of comes back. It kind of comes back in a way to the Brandon Aiyuk thing. I mean, I hear everybody saying, and I get it. I'm done with it too. Like, this sucks. Let's just move on. I'm done with this. Okay. Is your team any better if you make a trade? I mean, we can pretend that you can get somebody who's going to help you win the Super Bowl this year, but let's be real. That's not actually going to happen. That's not how trades work. So now your team is appreciably worse for this year, but at least you don't have the headache of Brandon Aiyuk anymore. The same thing with Andrew Wiggins. And I know it's a little bit of apples and oranges, not just with sport, but also with player. But like, Andrew Wiggins does provide something. The Warriors just lost Chris Paul for nothing. The Warriors just basically took Klay Thompson and turned him into three different people that amalgamate basically into a Klay Thompson, maybe a little bit better. Like, this is a team that needs as much help as they can get. And I think it's a much better bet to hope that Andrew Wiggins comes into this year for reasons that no one will be able to explain and just looks like the Andrew Wiggins that we saw in 2022 again, is trying to rebound, will actually, get to a spot and put up a shot, shoots a three when he's open. All of these things we've seen him do. It's still in there, I have to think, somewhere. It wasn't that long ago that we saw this happen. And so is it that, or do you trade him for a guy like Kevin Huerter, who we know Kevin Huerter's not good? It's not as if there's some other level he can reach. He's fine. He can play him for like 10, 15 minutes a game, but he just kind of sucks. And so, Wiggins kind of sucks, but at least he doesn't always. I've seen him not suck. And
there's worse players. I'm willing
to roll it out again.
But who does he match up with? Because they're obviously trying to move him. Where do you think, where could you see him flip to, and for what?
Well, one of the spot that I thought would have made sense is if they had gone and gotten DeJounte Murray from the Atlanta Hawks. And I thought that Wiggins would have actually been a nice fit there in Atlanta because they're in a very weird spot. But the money would have been really clean. Murray can provide a lot of the things that they really like from Wiggins in terms of defensive versatility and things like that. But it's off the table. It's off the table because he's a Pelican now. I don't see anybody out here clamoring for an Andrew Wiggins. I don't see anybody out here looking for the distressed asset. I made the joke when Klay Thompson had made it clear that he wanted to go to Dallas, that they should do the sign and trade for D'Angelo Russell. And that'd be the funniest thing on the planet, that D'Angelo Russell just keeps coming back to the Warriors in these sort of forced sign and trades. And by the way, that offer was made by the Lakers, and the Warriors are like, hell no, we can't do this. Maybe that's it. Maybe the Warriors trade for Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell again. I mean, because honestly, those two are basically in a class of players by themselves. Just enigmatic annoyances, one of which is actually annoying. The other which is like just
he just needs a change of scenery. Would you trade him for Harrison Barnes?
That's a good question. I would. I like Harrison Barnes. Now Larry's gone. I would trade him for Harrison Barnes. But listen, they're not going to trade Andrew Wiggins. They're not going to trade Andrew Wiggins.
I hit the wrong button. As soon as you said I would, I ejected myself from the studio. I would. I'm out of here. That's it.
Harrison Barnes is where I draw the line.
That's it. I asked him that Harrison Barnes question. Damn it. He said he would, and I just bolted. That was it. I take no more.
These are truths that scare people away, Larry.
Steph likes Harrison Barnes. I don't know. It just seems like Harrison Barnes needs a change of scenery. He needs to leave SAC. Yeah. Wiggins needs to leave the Warriors. Yeah. It would probably be a win-win. Maybe you could get a second-round pick to it.
I mean, people say win-win a lot. Most of the time, it's actually a lose-lose. It's just different kind of losing.
All right, couple last thoughts before we bolt for the door here. One, there's a lot of talk that the Giants are going to do something at the deadline. There was a lot of talk today of David Schoenfeld of ESPN did a trade every team should do, and he's got the Giants trading Lamont Wade to the Mariners. He says the Mariners have an excellent farm system at the top with several top 50 prospects and some top 100 guys, and they have a need. And obviously, Lamont Wade's having a tremendous year. Do you do that kind of a deal and sell? Then there's another article out saying, and this is by John Conahan, says the Giants named the top landing spot for a hitter they had offseason trade interest in, and it's Cody Bellinger. Giants are only 2.5 out of the third wild card. Cubbies are, struggling. They got a terrible pen. Jed Hoyer says he'd like to, make some moves, but he says we backed ourselves into a corner. But it sounds like the Cubs are going to be sellers. Would you take Cody Bellinger? I mean, they lost Jung-Hoo Lee. They were going after Bellinger. Supposedly Toronto, the Cubs, and the Padres all went after Bellinger. What do you think? I know Bellinger's been kind of disappointing. 285 at-bats. He's hitting 270, 9 home runs.
Yeah.
But 270 in today's big leagues with 329 on base, that's almost like a 300 hitter right there.
It's all the things that I could have told you were going to happen for Cody Bellinger are happening. The excessive amount of weak contact isn't going over the fence the way that it did last year. Inexplicably.
What's his issue? It's like he gets stagnant.
He has this big, long, loopy swing, and unless he hits it perfect sweet spot, he doesn't hit the ball fast enough or hard enough. And so if he loses any of that bat speed, if he doesn't have the timing perfectly right, he goes into these deep slumps. And there's a little bit of Matt Chapman there, but Matt Chapman has a much more compact swing, right? And when Matt Chapman gets outs these days, I mean, they're loud as hell. And when he doesn't get outs, they're big time hits. The Giants had every opportunity to sign Cody Bellinger. I'm told they didn't really want Cody Bellinger this past offseason. I think a lot of other people attributed Cody Bellinger to them, but they went under the hood on some of this data that they care so much about. And they're like, this guy's not going to be good anymore. So at least with Chapman, at least with Snell, they could justify it on an analytical basis. With Cody Bellinger, you're like, no, he just had his best year. He's trying to cash in, and we're going to be the ones holding the bag if we give him any sort of a contract. I'll say this. I would rather have Ian Happ from the Cubs. There's a lot of Cubs players that if the Giants are looking to poach, I would rather have than Cody Bellinger.
Who do you want from the Cubs?
Ian Happ would be probably very high on the list. He's a guy who can play every outfield position. You can throw him at first if you need to. You can DH him. He's a good clubhouse guy. Nothing special, but just a solid baseball player that you want in the lineup every day and who is going to fill up the categories for you.
I wouldn't mind having Hendricks. I mean, if you're really looking to make a run in the second half of the year.
He got blown up the other day. I mean,
I know, but he's such a skilled little finesse guy.
I know.
I mean, he looked good earlier.
Jamison Taillon, I think, would be more of a vibe. I think he has just a little bit of a higher floor. I mean, Hendricks got knocked out of the rotation this year for a team that barely has any starters.
You're going to have to pay more for Taillon, though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, if you go hard and just get Justin Steele, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but I'm of the mindset that the Giants, with the way that their roster is constructed and the situation that's currently unfolding, should lean more towards the trade of Lamont Wade. Because, yes, he's had a wonderful year, but like David Villar's come in and looked just fine, and that there's options there. When you have a bunch of guys that you can mix and match, if someone wants to give you value for them, and I think
the year Wade's having, it'll be almost a shame if he wasn't in the postseason. He's been really good.
That's right. But like
really good.
When you're in a league right now where like all but 3 teams are in the playoff hunt, you have an incredible opportunity to take advantage of a seller's market. And the Giants are a team that doesn't have superstar players, maybe save for Elliot Ramos, who obviously is untouchable. But everybody else, you can kind of mix and match, right? Like nobody is sacred on that roster. And by the way, Nick Ahmed's in there. Well, now they got Brett Wisely in there. Or they put in a Tyler Fitzgerald. They even call up Luciano. Like It's all sort of the same. That's the whole idea of the Giants. You can mix and match, and everyone goes left and right. Nobody stands out. So if anybody wants to give you anything of real worth for these guys, it's not as if you are now at a deficit at any of these positions because, oh, you traded Michael Conforto or, oh, you traded a Lamont Wade. Like, you have a very viable backup probably already on the 26-man roster.
I'm just glad that Matos and Ramos are up and swinging it, because those guys, I mean, especially Ramos, I mean, Ramos, I think, has demonstrated here in the first half of 2024 that he ain't going back and that he is real.
He's going to the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going back, and he, to see them, that to me, to watch him emerge as a, 5-tool outfielder, it's just fun. I love watching him. I love watching Matos. I think Luciano is going to be really fun to watch hit over the next few years. I don't know if he can field, but he can definitely hit.
Half
Hunter Bishop. They got this Bryce Eldridge who's going to be in the futures game. The Giants may have some bats worth watching here in the not that distant future, but I love Ramos, man.
Keep loading up, because you will get starting pitching coming through the pipeline here in the second half, and then that should appreciably make your team better. And then again, there are some untouchables. There are some guys that you couldn't trade if you wanted to. But if someone wants Mike Yastrzemski, that's fine. It doesn't hurt your team. It doesn't hurt your team to trade some of these guys who do have some value right now. And you're taking advantage of a big-time seller's market, and I don't think it hurts your chances of making the playoffs at all to lose a veteran or two off of this roster. So I think that the Giants would be foolish to not dig down deep and try to make something happen here and be sellers at the deadline. I'm not saying wave a white flag or anything, but in this giant game of arbitrage that you're playing in Major League Baseball, take advantage of opportunities that are unbalanced. And that is one that currently exists for the San Francisco Giants. And if you can you trade Soler. I mean, bring up Luciano, let him DH him.
Yeah, he's heating up. I'd like to keep Soler, but I would definitely be interested in seeing the Giants be aggressive. Maybe get a bat. I
don't want them to add anybody. I wouldn't
mind an outfield bat. I don't like watching Slater and Yaz and these guys. It's just, I'd much rather have one more outfield bat.
You've made that abundantly clear, Larry. What I would want.
I mean, those guys are just dull.
I get you. And that's the beauty of it. If someone wants to give you a good prospect for a dull player that you can replace overnight without, not even by that prospect, by just another guy somewhere in your system, or even on your roster, or hell, not even on your roster. Someone just got cut today and Farhan picked him up on waivers, but you can just replace him because everybody on that team is replaceable. And if you have an opportunity to sell one of the 23 replaceable dudes on that roster and get anything of worth for the future, you got to take advantage, because next year it might not be a seller's market like this.
I know. I mean, but this is not Farhan's deal. He's so worried about message sending, and he gets to the July deadline. He's worried about losing the clubhouse. Last year was a clusterfuck. I mean, my God, they talked about getting anybody. We're going to overturn every stone. We're going to look for this. We're looking for that. They got AJ Pollock. He didn't get a single hit. He was truly atrocious. All right, two last things I want to show. One is I want to show a couple videos here. I'm going to share the screen. This is the Hibachi, Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas has come out and basically said that if the Warriors moved Draymond Green and went with KD, that they would have had 3 more titles. Here's a little bit of the Hibachi.
How you came across that number.
The Hibachi.
Be a good teammate and be a franchise guy, right? You offered that to Clay and you gave him that decision. He was going to make the right decision. I mean, I think sometimes when everybody is not meat, right? Everybody is not product.
Let me ask you a question. What's the thing that you're saying there?
Kenyon Martin.
Yeah.
The whole thing went down with Draymond and KD. Mm-hmm. You think they made the wrong decision then?
Yep.
You said if they would have stuck with KD and tried to move Draymond at that point. It's a
Dramatic
chameleon.
pause.
These are
Dramatic
deeply
pause.
pensive men. Half of this video is them staring at each other.
Dramatic pause.
How
I'm a-
high is Gilbert Arenas right now?
And that's a good one.
Hibachi.
Having KD would have kept the chances of winning championships very, very high, right? You know, you move Draymond Green out and you keep KD, and it's been KD, Clay, and Steph this whole time.
Probably
You know,
2 more.
they have 2 more, maybe even 3, depending on, you know, what other pieces they put around. So yes.
Yeah, because you can't count all 3 of them dudes being out at once.
Yes. So yeah, it would have been smarter because you can't replace, like, I know you can't replace what Draymond brings to that team, but you can't replace someone like Kevin Durant. Be a good teammate.
There you go.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy who's got some time. We
Unreal.
could have edited that 158. We could have edited out 40 seconds of just them sitting around, but it was better for the dramatic impact. What do you think? Do you agree with the hibachi? By the way, I've got a great hibachi story. So I'm interviewing him. He's a rookie.
Yeah.
I'm on KMBR. It's Sports Phone, the great Ray Ritter. He's like, I can get you Gilbert Arenas. He's back in his hotel room. I'm like, awesome. So phone rings and producer says, Krug, can you come in here? Gilbert wants to talk to you for a second. So I'm like, all right. So I go in there and go, hey, Gilbert, what's going on, man? Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate you. He's like, oh, man, that's cool. I had to go out to the store and get a few things, and now I'm just going to be playing some video games. I'm hanging out. I go, yeah, we're about 10 minutes away. Is that good? Can we get you in about 10 minutes? He's like, yeah. I'm like, we're going to talk about 20, 30 minutes. Is that cool? He's like, yeah, no problem. I'm just hanging out. And so the interview starts, and I say, Gilbert Arenas with us, and he's in D.C. right now. The Warriors just beat the Wizards. He's back in his hotel room. So Gilbert, give me your post game routine. What do you do? And he's like, and this is, he's a rookie. And he goes, sometimes guys want to go out, but sometimes I just like to stay in. And I go, well, what's the routine when you're staying in? And he goes, yeah, I like to go down and get a half gallon of like Rocky Road ice cream and then just wolf that down as I play video games, and then I crash. And I'm like, dude, you eat a half gallon of Rocky Road ice cream and then fall asleep? I go, I don't think I'd ever wake up from that. I'd just be like in a massive, heart attack in the middle of the night. And he's just like, yeah, man, that's my routine. I go with a half gallon of Rocky Road or some of my favorite ice cream. There's a couple other flavors I like, and then I play video games and then I crash.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, I'm sure I'm
half gallon of ice cream at midnight on the road.
I'm sure his insulin levels are doing great.
I mean, but if you run up and down,
interesting cat,
you burn those kind of calories.
Yeah,
what do you think
Michael
of his
Phelps'
notion?
Diet.
What do you think of Gilbert Arenas' notion? Would if the Warriors, instead of backing Draymond, backed KD, traded Draymond, and KD stayed here, what would have been the result?
Would it have stopped Klay Thompson's ACL from tearing and then Achilles from tearing? Because the notion that no. Listen, no one has suggested ever that the Warriors picked Draymond Green over Kevin Durant because Draymond Green's the better player. No one has ever suggested that because it's a stupid thing to say. So just to engage on that point as if it's salient is preposterous. The Warriors chose Draymond Green over Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant chose any other team over the Golden State Warriors because Draymond Green was on it. And by the way, you can say, well, you can get rid of Draymond Green and then KD would change his mind. But that's not how that worked. It's not how it worked. KD came to the Warriors expecting to be anointed the number one player in the league. He came to the Warriors so that he'd win championships. And then, much like LeBron when he went to the Heat, everyone who was bitching and whining and complaining about him going to the Heat or him going to the Warriors, they would say, well, he's so great. How come, this guy's the best there is. And it would be the exact same thing for him. And when he won the titles, that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And it was because people kept holding on to the grudge with KD, that he went to a super team, he went to a 73-win team, all this stuff. And so he knew that if he were ever going to get the legacy that at the time he wanted, he was going to have to go, quote, do his own thing. So he chose another team over the Warriors. The Draymond Green thing is just a convenient excuse.
I mean, KD went to understand who KD is. He went to 3 high schools. He's a little bit of a nomad. Some people are like that. They they don't stay in any one place. They need to keep moving. That I just think that's him.
Stuff that it lends to it when you know KD's story. And I mean, KD and I have had it back and forth plenty of times in person in the media. I mean, listen, when it comes to KD, nobody questions his brilliance on the basketball court. Least of all me. I'd be the first person to tell you how great he is. And we've had many conversations about it. I just don't put up with his weird bullshit. And I never found it beneficial because I knew I'm not getting access to Kevin Durant unless Kevin Durant actually likes me and trusts me. And it became pretty clear early on that he did not like me and he did not trust me. But I kept getting access because I just didn't take his bullshit, and he found me intriguing in that sense. While as everyone else is just fawning and overlooking weird shit all the time, I'm just like, that's fucking weird. And I would bring it up to him because we were in, at the time, very close quarters in those locker rooms and at practices and stuff. And I don't know. I just think that we both found each other deeply confusing. And I like Kevin. I mean, I like Kevin. I think me and Kevin could talk for hours.
This headline just caught my eye. Philadelphia sports radio mainstay banned from Citizens Bank Park.
That.
My good friend Howard Eskin, longtime Philadelphia announcer.
You know what he did?
Supposedly he's been the alleged inappropriate behavior. He was accused of making an unwanted advance on an employee at the ballpark in May. A female employee of Airmark accused Eskin of laying an unwelcome kiss, close quote, unwelcome kiss on her despite her effort to move away from Eskin. The incident took place prior to the game at CP Rankin Club, an area behind home plate that used to be called the Diamond Club. So there you go. In a statement, Airmark said, "We worked with Odyssey and the Phillies to ensure that appropriate steps were taken to protect our employees and all of our Airmark employees at Citizens Bank Park." Eskin's 73. He works for WIP, and Odyssey is the station's parent company.
Yeah, so be careful here.
Of course, that's also the parent company for 95.7 The Game. Odyssey also confirmed the broadcaster's, quote, unwelcome kiss. The moral of the story, Dieter, is
don't be kissing.
Yeah, you're not Richard Dawson, and this isn't the Family Feud. You know, let's play the feud.
Those were all very
Let's play the feud. Come here, darling. Come here, darling.
Yeah.
How many women were sat there and were like, I don't want to kiss this guy?
Well, it was the 70s, and women
women
didn't have rights then, and I'm glad that we're not in that time anymore.
Come on, Howard.
Yeah.
That's like Joe Namath to Susie Colbert. I want to kiss you.
Yeah.
Just don't, guys.
Quick thing on Joe Namath.
If you're thinking it over. The pros and the cons. She's attractive.
I don't think there's a lot of thinking.
But I mean, if you're thinking it over, just pause and then say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that.
What's the upside?
I know. What are you getting out of that? Ooh, I got a kiss. I mean, Woodpit 420. No kissy kissy. No kissy kissy. It's a good way to sum it up. All right, and we got this one. Let's finish on a high note.
Okay.
Let's finish on a high note. Howard Eskin. What can I say?
Yeah.
Well, let's finish on a high note. Let's dream about training camp. This is Coach Yak's Twitter.
Oh boy.
And he's putting out video of Jacob Cowing running routes.
Look at this guy going against air.
Now, I like Jacob Cowing.
I know.
Look at these routes.
Wow.
Good, Jake. Cut on a dime, didn't round that route out.
No, yeah. Look at that. It's almost like he's an NFL player.
It's amazing. Pro Football Hall of Fame right there. It's the Hall of Fame. But I do think this is my surprise pick to click in Ninerland this summer. Jacob Cowing. I love me some Jacob Cowing. I think he's going to be terrific. He creates separation. Purdy's going to hit him several times. I think Cowing's going to be really, really, as the kids would say, nice.
Nice, yes.
Nice.
Well, I love empty gym season as much as anybody. One of my favorite things when I was hardcore covering NBA was every off season you'd get a bunch of dudes that's like, look out, this guy's about to be awesome next year, because you'd see this video of him making a bunch of open threes at the NBA PA gym against nothing. And it's just open gym season, look out. And it's like, yeah, you're playing a bunch of dudes who have to go to their 9 to 5 after this. You're in the NBA. Of course you're kicking their ass. Like Jacob Cowing listen, I like Cowing. I liked what I saw. I'm not as high on him as you are, but I'm not down
I really
on him
love
either.
him. I think he's a great route runner.
Well,
and he's got 4.38 speed, and he's got collegiate production in 2 spots. He was not just good at Arizona; he was good at UTEP.
Agreed. And
So
you can move him inside, outside. He does about 3 things exceptionally well in terms of how he runs his routes, and he did them at a very, very high level, especially at Arizona for Jed Fish, who runs an NFL style offense. So I think there's some translatability there. Like I'm not down on Cowing. I like Cowing a lot. I'm just not in love with him. And I'm certainly not going to change my opinion on Jacob Cowing after watching him run in an open field with no one trying to stop it.
Ronan Redstone 27 sees the vision. I like what I'm seeing right there. Cowing going to Canton.
Listen, if he keeps getting that kind of coverage, he's going to go to Canton. I mean,
he's going to Canton. We are not going to Canton, but we are going to end the stream. Great stuff. Dieter has been a hit on Thursdays, and it's not. We found out tonight that the key is not Thursday. Dieter can be a hit on Wednesdays as well. Hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Light off fireworks, have hot dogs, eat, drink.
Be merry.
There's something about the 4th of July that's really, really cool. Now, I know there's been a lot of controversy about what's the real day and this and that. Whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But I will say this. We're not getting Joey Chestnut tomorrow morning. And yet, if you turn on ESPN right now, I think they've got a marathon going of Nathan's contest. Like if they somehow skipped one of the years and threw like an old year in there, would anybody be able to tell?
Gluttony is gluttony. I don't think they would.
Seriously. And by the way, is there a seat? Is there an event that you don't want to be in the first row to? It's the Killer Whale show and that. What are you going to have? Kobayashi barfing hot dogs on your face? And that's the advantage of being there?
Gallagher in Las Vegas, Shamu at SeaWorld, Joey Chestnut on Coney Island. Is that right? Coney Island? Yeah. Those are the 3.
I saw Joey Chestnut from the face. He looks fine. But when you see him from behind, the guy's an avalanche. I mean, the guy, it's really bad.
That he's unwell.
Seriously. If you had to eat something in mass, what do you think that you...
Larry, I have exceptional experience in this.
But I mean, seriously, what do you think if you had to eat something in mass?
Yeah.
What would it be, and how many do you think you could eat, and what do you think the record would be?
I don't know what the record is for chicken wings, but I guarantee
chicken wings, boneless or bone in?
Bone in, because I said chicken wing, not chicken nugget, Larry. And
but chicken wings, then it's, to me, that seems like a really dangerous thing to go high speed. And also, it does seem like you might be able to go incomplete. Like if you eat really, really well, like what percentage of the wing needs to be eaten before you can move on to the next wing, I guess.
Listen, I'm willing to take it.
You got to pick that bone clean.
That's fine. I can do it.
I've got confidence in you.
I got techniques. And I'm telling you right now, Larry, I can give you 100 chicken wings right now.
100 chicken wings?
I'm telling you, I can give you 100 chicken wings. Not a question in my mind. I've put down 50
with buffalo sauce.
Yeah,
or just plain, just barbecue.
Dip it. I'll dip it in ranch for you.
Oh my god!
I'll dip it in blue cheese for you. I can give you 100.
100. Okay, you know what I could eat a ton of. Have you ever gone to like a fancy wedding and they have like prawns with cocktail sauce?
Yeah.
And it's like a whole table.
I've had them outside of weddings too. They're delightful.
Yeah, I mean, like, have you ever gone to like a brunch buffet? I could probably wolf down 40 to 45
easy
prawns with cocktail sauce. What do you think?
Cheese curds.
What's a cheese curd?
It's just a fried piece of cheese. You basically turn a piece of cheese into a little nugget.
Fried cheese?
Yeah.
Oh my, there's almost only so much you.
If you're wondering why people in Wisconsin don't have a very long life
A
expectancy,
waiver. If you're eating fried cheese, you're signing a waiver.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen.
So you're going with chicken wings. I'm going prawns. The dogs seem disgusting. I mean, now I like a grilled dog, but they boil them and then they just straight down buns get wet and just kind of
phallic. You're just taking dogs down the throat. It's not good.
I don't even like dogs. By the way, I won't even I'll never eat hot dogs at my house. But like if we went to a baseball game tonight, I'd be like, hey, we want to get a couple hot dogs? Why is that? Why is that? Why will I eat a hot dog at a Giants game, but I won't eat a hot dog at home?
Listen, man, I don't get paid for this. I certainly don't get paid enough for this to break that one down. You got to bring that up with a paid mental health professional because it's probably got something to do with your mom and your dad and something that happened when you were 12 years old. I mean, that one's deep-seated, Larry. I don't know what that is. You're looking for comfort in all the wrong place. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. But
looking for love in all the wrong places. Remember that song? All right, that's going to do it for us. As you can tell, I am sweating just a little bit.
I was going to say that you stayed exceptionally dry. You kept your powder dry.
Yeah. I'm
going to go eat
like
100 chicken wings. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to go eat 75 shrimp with cocktail sauce. Happy 4th of July, Dieter.
Eat a whole brick of cheese.
Talk to you next week. I love this country.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for.